Good morning, everybody. Welcome. I'm going to give it just a minute or two here as I see everybody's kind of coming into the webinar. Welcome. So exciting to see everybody popping in. All right. Well, welcome to our first Arizona Women Leading Government webinar of the series this year. My name's Christy Reister. I am with the town of Queen Creek, and I am also one of your board members for Arizona Women Leading Government. So we're so excited that you're here joining us today. Just a couple of things before we get started. If you haven't already signed up to be a member, I want to make sure that you guys do that. You can find all that information at AZWLG.org. So please sign up to be a member today. You get great discounts on things like our annual conference, which is coming up November 6th and 7th at the Phoenix Convention Center. We are accepting topic submissions right now, so also visit the website if you have a suggestion or a topic, or you would like to submit a workshop or session for the conference. And then if you have any topic ideas for future webinars, any suggestions, please also email us at WLG@AZWLG.org and let us know. We'd be happy to take your suggestions. We always want to make sure that we're offering topics that you guys want to hear. So with that, one other housekeeping item, please put your questions. If you have any questions for our amazing speaker today, please put those in the Q&A box down at the bottom. I'll be monitoring both the Q&A and the chat. I believe Jennifer will as well. Please try to keep those Q&A in, or please keep your questions in the Q&A if possible. Without further ado, I want to go ahead and get started and welcome our speaker, Jennifer Majori from Always This Good. She's going to be talking about negotiation mastery. So Jennifer, please take it away.
Thanks, Chrissy. I appreciate it. I am very happy to be here with you today. So thank you so much. I'm also really excited to talk about this important topic. Negotiation skills are critical for women personally and professionally. So let's see here. So a little bit about me and our business. So I am the CEO of Always This Good. We offer mindful business consulting. So everything that we do incorporates stress management techniques and burnout prevention. We offer consulting on retainer for both leaders and teams. We have award-winning peer advisory programs and customized retreats and training that we do for outside organizations. And we also offer destination retreats. And I'm excited to share that on June 10th, our priority access list will be the first to learn about our next destination. If you're not sure, but you think you might be interested in spending time with some other incredible women learning in a bucket list location, please feel free to scan the QR code and be added to that list. But everything that we do, again, incorporates stress management and burnout prevention. That could include yoga, meditation, massage, and aromatherapy, breath work. And so these are tools that our clients are able to learn here and then take out into the world to help them be more successful. So let's talk a little bit about what we'll be talking about today. But first, if you would, in the chat, I would love to know your comfort level with negotiation. How comfortable are you negotiating the best possible outcome for yourself? So give me a 1 if you think, yikes, not interested, don't want to do it. 2, I probably do okay. And 3, if you feel pretty confident that you're able to negotiate the best possible outcome for yourself. Awesome. I see some 3s, I see some 2s, I see a 1. Looking good. Perfect. I love seeing those 3s. If it's a 1 or a 2, you're going to learn some skills today that will help hopefully get you to a 3. Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. That's really helpful. So, today we're going to talk about the research and what studies show about women negotiating and asking for what we deserve. We'll talk about the problem and why we struggle with self advocating, the cost. It's not just about salary or revenue, it costs us a lot when we are not negotiating for our own best interests. And I'll provide you a skills framework for negotiation. And so that includes both more direct best practices that you might or may not have heard of before, but also indirect and nonverbal influence that you can start using immediately. And as Christy mentioned, if you would please, any questions that you have as you have them, feel free to pop into the Q&A section and leave those questions, and I will be sure to have some time at the end to address those. All right, let's talk. So, women negotiate less assertively than men do, and we often leave very valuable opportunities on the table. But if we are intentional and aware of the issue, we can begin to bridge that gap and ask for what we deserve. So, some studies recently show us this over and over again. Glassdoor tells us that over half of US women bypass initial salary negotiation altogether. So, when they get a job offer, they take whatever is offered, they do not negotiate for salary when accepting a job offer. When we do ask for a higher salary, we ask for less than our male counterparts, on average, about 30% less. Only 35% of women said that they asked for a pay raise in the last year, compared to half of men. We really see this issue with asking for a raise and asking for more money when we ask for a raise as time goes on in our careers. Female MBA grads earn about 88% of what male MBA grads make in their first job, but a decade later in their careers, they're making about 60% of what men make. So as time goes on, we continue not to ask as frequently and we don't ask for as much. Women are also less likely to be promoted, especially early in our careers. We only hold about 1/3 of management and executive roles, which is really problematic when we think about having role models to help us, create the path to the top ranks. We're also more comfortable and more successful when we're advocating for others. And this is really no surprise. We'll talk in a little bit about why we have these issues, but this very much aligns with what many girls are taught when they were young about prioritizing harmony and other people's needs. So we are often more comfortable going to bat for somebody else's needs as caregivers, whether that is at work or at home, than advocating for ourselves and our own needs and best interests. So, why do we have this problem? Why are women struggling to negotiate? There are a few issues. So, first, there's cultural conditioning. We are taught the good girl script. We are taught to be kind. We are taught to prioritize other people's needs and feelings, to keep the peace, to be easy to be around. We are praised for being agreeable and accommodating. And studies show that we pay what is called the ambition tax. And so when we are assertive or we are ambitious in our careers, we are considered to be less likable and less hireable in the workplace. And so that is that ambition tax. We do have a pressure to be polite and not be too much for other people. The Women in Workplace study from McKinsey shares that women are more likely than men to be called bossy, aggressive, or intimidating when they lead assertively. This creates a bind for us. We risk being assertive and leading and experiencing backlash, or staying silent and risking invisibility. Many times women fear being unlikable more than they fear failure or not being acknowledged or getting what they deserve. We also opt out because of the backlash. As women advance in leadership roles, they encounter more challenges, and includes being one of few or sometimes the only woman in top leadership roles. They face backlash and microaggressions that challenge their competence. And women leaders are more likely to experience burnout and depression and consider leaving the workforce after managing a team. Uh, Women also are just too busy. We're often too busy to focus on our own needs and negotiating for what we deserve. Women perform the majority of unpaid labor around the world, but also in the US, including emotional caretaking and peacekeeping. And that includes both at home and at work. So taking care of our coworkers and our employees, our subordinates' emotional well-being. time, energy, and focus are siphoned away from us through tasks that are rooted in a desire to be perceived as being helpful or good. We spend more time on unpaid labor, and the more time that we are spending on that unpaid labor, the more likely we are to report depression. We are judged for making ourselves and our careers a priority and not making other people or caregiving or unpaid labor behind the scenes tasks the priority. And so we do avoid backlash by prioritizing other people and other tasks. So this is a large scale societal problem. It starts when we are girls. When we lack awareness around the issue, women also often perpetuate the problem, which we'll talk more about. And it might feel like the deck is stacked against us, but here's the truth. When we are aware of the issue, we are better able to advocate for ourselves, both assertively and ethically. I want to make it clear that what we're talking about today is not being pushy. It is not creating win-lose situations where we're taking something from someone so that we can win. We are talking about ethical persuasion, self-advocacy, and creating mutually beneficial situations for ourselves and other parties. There are win-win situations, and we can create those outcomes assertively and ethically. All right. So when we fail to negotiate for our best interests, it costs us more than just the job we want, praise, or money. It costs us very dearly. First, our contributions often go overlooked. Our results are undervalued in the workplace and sometimes at home. We suffer from missed opportunities because we aren't vocal about underscoring the results that we get. We receive less pay and have less financial security, and we create less generational wealth. We create it at a rate lower than men create generational wealth. This impacts our families and our lifestyle. It results in diminished confidence. We over accommodate for others. We spend a lot of time fearing rejection. And there's the cost of chronic self abandonment. We start to feel badly about ourselves. We start feeling resentful at home, family members, friends, coworkers. We experience higher degrees of burnout. Women leaders report higher rates of burnout than men, in fact. And this is in part due to us disproportionately being expected to manage things like workplace culture and team emotions. And then there's self-silencing or withholding the truth, withholding our opinions because we want to maintain the peace. We don't want to rock the boat. This is strongly correlated with depression and anxiety in women when we self-silence our opinions. When we consistently suppress our voices to avoid conflict, we experience higher rates of emotional exhaustion, less confidence, and poor mental well-being. But the greatest cost is that we often don't reach our full potential. And that is why it's so important for me and for our work here at Always Is Good, our team, to do this work to make sure that women have the skills that they need to get what they deserve. We want you to reach your fullest potential, but also the world needs your contributions and your important work. So let's talk about some of the skills that you need. A book that I really love, by the way, I'll have my email address on the last slide. We've got a tip sheet. So if you'd like any of this information, you're welcome to email us to get it. You don't have to write it down or remember it. But there's a great book by Vanessa Van Edwards, and it's called Cues, C-U-E-S, Cues. And in the book, she talks about both verbal and nonverbal communication and how we can actually create more charisma. Charisma is a blend of warmth and competence. And so we can communicate that through, as she calls them, cues. Now, women tend to be very comfortable with the warmth cues and communicating the warmth, and we struggle sometimes a little bit more with communicating competence. So we'll talk about both these sort of direct verbal and indirect forms of communication and influence, but also in terms of warmth and creating more competence for that additional charisma. Nonverbal gestures, very interesting study about nonverbal gestures. This really underscores the importance of understanding both types of skills. In a study, participants were shown candidates interviewing for jobs. They were shown videos with no sound, and they were able to predict which candidates were hired for the job based on body language alone, without hearing the conversation, without hearing how candidates answered or how qualified they were for a job, their past experiences, simply from body language alone. It absolutely matters. Very, very interesting study. So while many people focus on some of the more direct, best practices, we don't want to neglect more of those kind of nonverbal skills. So first, the direct skills. When we talk about negotiation, very frequently we hear that there are 5 phases of negotiation. So we'll talk about some of those skills that are important in each of these phases. And these phases are preparation, the opening, which is kind of the opening, introduction to what it is that we are asking for, discussion, bargaining, so coming to terms, and then the conclusion. So in preparation, probably makes sense, right? We want to do our research. So for example, if we are asking for a raise and or maybe a promotion, we want to do our research. And so that might include developing some data points around similar organizations, industries, looking at salaries, average salaries for the role in your geographic location, and being very clear about your objectives, which would be what that salary is that you're asking for, or the new title and responsibilities. And then we want to create a data-backed proposal, and even better if you can show up with something that can be shared, something that you can print out to show some of that data. But we want to reinforce the value that we are offering or the benefit that we are offering in exchange for what we are asking for. So in this case, it might be the results that you're getting at work, revenue that you have saved, projects that you were able to complete, relationships that you have built, but show up prepared to demonstrate the value. In the opening, we want to make sure that we always underscore that we are aligned in our values and our goals, and express appreciation for the other party's time and support when meeting with us and hearing us out. Now, there are benefits to being the one who opens, and there are benefits to being the person who is listening to the other side opening. So let's talk about that a little bit. So the benefits of initiating the negotiation. First, you have the opportunity to frame the situation. You can control the narrative, and you can establish your goals and what it is that you're asking for. It also can provide a psychological advantage because it shows that you're confident and you're prepared for the conversation. So to give you an example of what this might look like, it might sound something like, based on this market and the scope of the role, I believe that this role should be in about the $90,000 to $100,000 salary range. Does this align with your expectations and budget? That's your opening. Very clear, very concise. You are asking for feedback on what it is that you are seeking. Now, sometimes there are benefits in letting the other party open. And this is especially true when you've got a power dynamic where maybe you feel like you've got less power and the other party has more power. Or if you are in a new workplace and you're not really sure yet of what the company culture is like, sometimes that is beneficial to let them start framing the situation. They may reveal more information than they intend to about how they think about the situation, how they are framing the deal in their minds. And it can sometimes give you some additional information about their priorities and maybe their constraints or limitations going into the situation. So here's an example of what that might sound like. I'd love to hear how you're approaching the agreement and what your priorities are. So it's asking for that information before offering any information. And it does give you an opportunity to kind of put your thoughts together and make sure that your priorities are aligned with theirs. When we get into the discussion phase, this is when we're really presenting all of those data points in support of what we are asking for. We want to use precise language, a very assertive and confident tone, and clear verbal communication. Engage in active listening. Active listening, again, there's little body language. It might be turning a bit to hear better, maintaining direct eye contact, asking clarifying questions, and making notes. And in fact, making notes and documenting the conversation is extremely important, especially, we'll talk a little bit in a minute about micro concessions, but if you're making agreements or arrangements or asking for things, little agreements that are being made throughout the conversation, we don't want to forget about those. And so creating a summary as you go along is very helpful. Then we get into bargaining. So now it's time to get down to brass tacks. Everybody has talked about what it is that they want and need in the situation, the mutual benefits of whatever this agreement is that you might be negotiating. So now is the time to have clear offers and counter offers. And please don't rush yourself. I see this many, many times with professional women. We rush ourselves. We believe that what we have to say is not very important. We don't want to take up too much time, but this is not the time to rush. You have value to provide and you are asking for something, and this is your opportunity to make your case to receive what you are asking for. Do not rush through the bargaining process. In fact, it's very common in high stakes negotiations to take breaks at this stage, to take a pause and schedule a subsequent meeting. It's perfectly okay, especially when it's very high pressure or prolonged negotiation, but do not rush yourself at this stage. Make sure that you're backing up your position with data. Again, don't be afraid to, if you've got handouts, if you've got visuals, whatever that data is, underscore that information. Reinforce what you're asking for by presenting those data points again. And outline your non-negotiables. So there are some things that maybe you are willing to compromise on, and there are things that you won't compromise on. And so make sure that you're outlining those non-negotiables firmly but respectfully. Finally, when we come to a conclusion, we've gone through the negotiation, we want to clearly state the agreed upon terms and also confirm mutual benefits. So the other party might feel like they're giving something up, but we want to remind them of what they are gaining. Again, making those notes and documenting as you go means that you will be able at the end to really concisely, clearly sum up the agreement as you understand it to be so that you can confirm it with the other party. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the nonverbal and maybe more subtle forms of influence. This is really interesting to me. I've done a lot of reading on the research and information in this area. So over thousands of years, humans have evolved to learn from each other through what are called mirror neurons in our brains and mimicking. And so we see this with babies even under a year old, right? If we wave, if we blow a kiss, if we smile or laugh, they mirror that back to us. It is how we learn from others. And those mirror neurons, or those parts of our brains that light up when we see somebody doing something, but they also light up when we are preparing to do something or thinking about doing something, and when we imagine doing something. And so we're able to leverage this to our advantage in negotiations. And here's how. First, we can sort of prime ourselves for success and quickly unconsciously build rapport with the other party by mimicking. Now, we don't want to get creepy and weird by doing every same gesture that they are doing, but certainly, if they are very confident, you are confident. If they are sitting like this, you might lean forward, but that can help to establish rapport more quickly. Uh, Strong, confident body language can also inspire confidence, the confidence of others in you. This is really interesting. So you'll see on this slide that there is a picture of the first ever televised presidential debate, and it was John F. Kennedy and Nixon. And you can see in their body language. Now, JFK went on to win this particular election, and it was very interesting that voters had this visual to be able to see this debate for the first time. And so you can see the difference in body language. First, the moderator is sitting between them. Now, JFK is looking at the people at home. He's looking directly at the camera, and that feels like eye contact. Where Nixon is looking over to the moderator, and it might feel a little bit shifty because he's looking over to the side. He also had an injury earlier in the day, and so he probably wasn't feeling very well, and it translates as a lack of confidence. You can see some self-soothing behavior when he puts his hand on his leg there, and he's kind of rubbing his leg. His feet are also not flat on the floor. Now, if you look at JFK, even though his legs are crossed, the foot that's on the floor is flat on the floor. He's got a straight spine and his shoulders are back. He looks confident and he inspired confidence. And so that body language is very important. Oftentimes, when we are lacking confidence in our message or in what we're asking for, we tend to shrink, we minimize. We want to be very small and we want to hide. So we want to make sure that we are pushing the shoulders back, straight spine, take up space. This might be a little bit too much in a negotiation, but you want to take up space. You get the point, right? We can all imagine Wonder Woman, when she's got her hands on her hips. She's very strong and very powerful. She is unafraid. She's very courageous, right? The beauty of this is that it works both ways. We can look more confident by making our bodies look confident, but we can also feel more confident. We can fake it till we make it by making our bodies more confident. So it's very, very important. Another kind of power pose is the steepled fingers. If this is feeling a little too evil villain, you can soften it up a little bit, but the open palms and fingers touching each other are also a very powerful move when it comes to nonverbal communication. Now, I mentioned that the same parts of the brains light up when we see something being done imagine doing something or prepare to do something. We can use visualization to our advantage also. So this is very common with Olympic athletes. Olympic athletes will imagine doing the perfect floor routine or a perfect performance, and they can reinforce those physical skills through imagining or visualizing their success. And you can do the same. So spend time practicing getting really comfortable and really grounded in those scenarios. The more time you spend visualizing and the more detailed you are, I mean, like detailed, what you have for breakfast, what you wear into the negotiation, how you feel and how you walk, your body language as you're walking into a negotiation, how you feel when you sit down. That can all really help to reinforce the experience in the moment and lend itself to being more confident in your negotiations. Be sure that you avoid fidgeting. Fidgeting conveys nervousness. If you observe people who are in authority, they're not, playing with their hair, they're not playing with a pen. They are moving very intentionally. They are speaking intentionally. They are moving smoothly. They're not making jerky movements. That fidgeting, again, really conveys a lack of confidence in what you are communicating and what you are asking for. So minimize unnecessary movements. Other ways that you can create connection or agreement would be leaning forward. So when we're interested, think about when you want to see something more closely. When you're interested, you kind of lean forward. Your eyebrows might go up a little bit. We nod in agreement. We smile and we keep eye contact. Those are all great ways to create connection and maintain active listening. And employing storytelling. So this is another way that humans have evolved over years and years to bond with one another is through storytelling. When we hear stories that we are emotionally connected to, it releases endorphins, dopamine, or epinephrine. It's a rush of happiness. It's pleasurable feelings. It can create goodwill. And in some cases, it can even motivate the other party to act. So think in terms of sharing stories that convey that mutual benefit that you are bringing and why they should say yes to what you are asking for. Uh, Finally, reinforce the win-win scenario. I really like to use we and us and our because we are a team that is working together. This is not me versus you. This is us and our experience and our agreement and our mutual benefit. And also focusing on future focused language. So that might sound something like, this is going to be truly transformational. I cannot wait to see our teams working together and to save you time and money and reduce your stress. So talking about what it's going to look like to work together in the future toward that mutual benefit. Finally, you can also seal the deal with a confident closing gesture. So leaning forward and nodding, shaking hands, a nice firm handshake helps really to convey that sense of shared success. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some advanced strategies, some advanced tactics and concepts. So sometimes negotiations can be very high pressure. Sometimes they can be very drawn out. They can require multiple meetings over multiple days. It can get pretty stressful. And so there are some things that we can do to help us to really to remain calm and resilient through the experience. So first would be managing your nervous system. So, managing the emotion and the nerves that come with these high pressure negotiations. And if you have ever experienced multiple meetings around a negotiation, you know that as you get closer to making an agreement, it can actually become more stressful the more times that you are meeting. And maybe you're really not looking forward to the second, third, or fourth meetings, right? So, understanding how we can manage our nervous system to stay calm and regulate our emotions can be very, very helpful. So, first, pause before responding. Again, don't rush, take your time. And if you need a minute to think about the answer or how you want to respond, take a minute, take a pause. That can give you a minute to kind of think through how you would like to respond without rushing into something. Breath work is very, very helpful. So you can do breath work before walking into a negotiation, even during. And so I would love for you to try this with me for just a minute. So let's do a box breath. So what we'll do is we are going to inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and then hold for 4. So first inhale for 4, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, before. So it might feel a little unnatural in the beginning, but as you practice it, it gets easier. And it is extremely helpful with calming your nervous system and kind of calming those emotions and nerves. This is a great thing to do as you're sitting in the car before you walk into a meeting. Things like using mantras or affirmations. Again, whatever we tell ourselves, whatever we visualize is what happens. And unfortunately, many of us spend, and I know this was a habit for me before I was aware of it, but we spend a lot of time focusing on the bad things happening, the worst case scenario, saying or doing the wrong thing, not getting what we want, and what's going to happen as a result of not getting it. But we really do ourselves a huge disservice because we tend to kind of create um, that self-fulfilling prophecy. We create whatever it is that we are focused on and thinking about. So using mantras or affirmations and telling ourselves that we've got things under control and that it's going to go well can be very helpful. And it can also create a self-fulfilling prophecy in the direction that we want to go in. So things like, I'm calm, I'm prepared, and I know my value. Super simple, but telling yourself that can really create a greater sense of confidence walking into negotiations. And not just other people's confidence, but your confidence in yourself. Or this is just one moment in the long game. This is not the end all be all. Horrible things aren't going to happen if this doesn't work out. This is just one moment in the long game. And I'm calm, I'm prepared, and I know my value. Visualization, again, spending time imagining successful negotiations and enjoying the results. We don't spend enough time. We spend more time freaking out about the bad things that could happen instead of daydreaming about enjoying the positive results of what we are creating through this negotiation. So spend some time visualizing not just a successful negotiation and kind of going through the experience, but what's on the other side and what you will have to enjoy as a result of the negotiation. And during a meeting that might start to feel very stressful or high pressure, or if you're getting tired or you're feeling emotional, take a moment and actually visualize as you're sitting in your seat. Nobody has to know what you're thinking about. Take 10 seconds and picture yourself in a peaceful place. Think about what that place is before you get into the meeting. So you're not trying to think of, where was that favorite vacation spot we went to as kids? What is maybe it's your garden. What's your favorite spot? Maybe it's some place that you go hiking, someplace that makes you feel safe and calm and peaceful. And think about being transported to that place for just a brief moment while you're in the middle of that negotiation. It can really help you to reduce the sense of urgency, maybe panic, and it can help you to kind of refocus on the bigger why you are going through this experience. Physical touch can also be very grounding for people. So this could be something very simple like rubbing your hand. If you are nervous before a negotiation, just like we would pat a baby, this can be very calming for us as well. So you can sit in your car, if you're driving on the way and you're feeling nervous, that can be very helpful. I love the trick of using what we call a personal totem. So this is a symbolism of our success and what we deserve. This could be something that represents a little bit of an upgrade. Maybe it's a very nice pen. Maybe it is a special piece of jewelry that you treat yourself to that you wear when you are, part of high pressure meetings and negotiations, but something that reminds you that you deserve an upgrade. You deserve the good things that you're asking for. And that personal totem can be a representation that reminds you during that meeting of the value that you bring. And note on intuition. Many times people fail to trust their gut. And when you're in the middle of a negotiation and you are in the discussion phase or you're in the bargaining phase, you might start to pick up maybe on some emotions or some reluctance or some doubt on the other side. Don't ignore your intuition. Your intuition actually is a shortcut. Your brain has observed situations and people, and it has learned over all of these years, and it's giving you a shortcut where you're picking up on a pattern or a personality trait or some behavior. So don't disregard your intuition in the middle of a negotiation. If your gut is telling you something, make sure that you're paying attention. If things are maybe not going well, a good salesperson, a consultative salesperson will tell you to ask for the no. Do not drag it out. Do not, threaten. Do not get frustrated. We're always playing the long game. And if we are not making progress and we're not in a position to maybe take a break or schedule another meeting, sometimes we have to accept an answer that we don't want. But again, we are keeping our reputation intact. We are avoiding rushed decisions or emotional decisions. And we're focusing on our integrity and building a long-term relationship. We might walk away from the table not getting what we want today, but keeping our integrity and reputation intact can often lead to future opportunities. Having a support system is very important. So having other professional women, or if it's a personal issue that you're dealing with, but having other women who have experienced something similar. It could be a coach, it could be a consultant, it could be a friend or a colleague, but having somebody that you can talk through the negotiation with ahead of time and that you can debrief with later to point out any learning opportunities can be extremely helpful as well. That outside perspective can help us to reduce stress and also get a fresh perspective on some new angles for our negotiations. Listen actively and track signals. So before I was talking to you about intuition and things you might be picking up on, more direct might be changes in language, changes in tone of voice, hesitation, recurring objections. If something kind of keeps coming up that is signaling some reluctance or resistance, don't ignore that. That could indicate some hidden concerns or unspoken priorities, and we want to seize upon addressing those immediately. So listen and listen for and track those communication signals from the other party. We want to stay flexible in terms of our tactics, but firm on our goals. And what I mean by that is sometimes we have in our minds that we need to get from A to B a particular way, but sometimes there are other ways we can still get to what we want. And so staying flexible in how we get to that end goal is very helpful. If a particular strategy isn't working, switch it up. So at work, that might look like maybe we bundle services, or we adjust the payment terms, or we need to reframe the value. Maybe what we thought was valuable to the other party is not actually valuable, but we pick up on what is and we can still deliver that. So switching up your strategy, being open to getting what you want differently, right? So showing some of that flexibility, that might be reducing the cost, but having fewer deliverables. You can keep the talks moving if you remain flexible on the tactics, but firm on the end goal. Micro concessions. So this is when we don't kind of give everything at once, but maybe throughout a conversation as we learn about what's important to the other party, we are giving a little bit here and there. It's a micro concession. A micro concession can be as simple even as agreeing or nodding. If somebody is unhappy about something, sure, I could see that. I could imagine feeling the same way, right? Agreeing with them. It could also be, again, maybe scaling back our proposal and giving less to the client, right? So a compromise, it could be maybe giving them some additional time, maybe an upgrade. I really don't like discounts. We don't want to devalue what we do, but sometimes it might be a small discount or giving them something a little extra. I really like the upsell or the value add, where if they take what you are proposing, you're also willing to give them something a little extra. But knowing what those little micro concessions might be before you get into negotiations can be very, very helpful. And then BATNA and ZOPA, which sound very strange, but they're acronyms. So BATNA is best alternative to negotiated agreement. So knowing what you are willing to accept as a plan B. So it's having another plan in place if you walk away from the negotiation table without getting what you want. So what's the best possible plan B? Well, if I don't get the raise that I'm asking for, maybe I negotiate for 2 weeks of paid vacation time instead. Or maybe I get a flexible or a remote schedule, something that, gives me some additional work-life balance if I'm not necessarily going to get the money. Maybe I'm spending less money on childcare because I've got a more flexible schedule. So what are some other ways you can get to what you want if the other party is just not willing to come to an agreement? ZOPA is zone of possible agreement. And so this is where it gets really important in the discussion phase to understand where is the overlap in the other party's needs and your needs. Where do we have overlapping goals? So for example, if a municipality wanted to hire a tech firm to create an app, the city's budget might be 400,000 to 550,000, but the price of the app might start at 500,000 up to 650,000. That zone of possible agreement is the high end range of the budget and the low end range of the vendor's pricing. So we are going to immediately start looking at how are we going to bring these numbers together to get what we want. Both parties can reach an agreement in this range. without sacrificing anything very essential or very critical. So focusing on that zone of possible agreement can be very helpful when we're starting to get into, really kind of getting down to those brass tacks and coming to a final agreement. It's helpful to think about prolonged negotiations, I think, is a chess game. So we're always thinking about the long game, right? We have a little conversation, we make a little concession, but we're thinking about how it's going to affect the next several steps within the negotiation. And understanding how each piece fits into our greater strategy, having patience and emotional discipline can help us to win. So here's where I would love for you to just take a moment, especially for those of you who shared twos and threes in the chat. You are entering a high pressure negotiation for something you really, really want. Now you know you have the awareness, you understand the skills and the mindset that top performers use when they get what they want in negotiations. I want you to imagine savoring that moment that you secure the deal. You get what you want because you were prepared, you had the right mindset, you stayed calm and confident, you used confident body language. Really embrace the confidence because you have what it takes to ask for and get what you want. So we are coming to our Q&A time, but I really invite you to please commit to trying some of these tactics. Even if you try one or two, they're going to maybe feel a little odd at first, but you'll develop more confidence as time goes on and as you practice and as you visualize. Again, it's ethical persuasion and self-advocacy. This is not about creating a win-lose situation. This is about creating mutual benefit and being acknowledged for the value that we bring. We have to really focus on self advocating and getting much more comfortable, and these are the skills that are required to do that. I don't want to see you let another opportunity pass by, so try some of these skills. All right. Again, as a quick reminder, you are welcome to email us. On the slide, you'll see this email address. If you would like to ask us for the tip sheet, you are welcome to join our priority access list if you would like to find out where we are going on our next destination retreat, June 10th. And now we will go ahead and open up for some Q&A. So I'm going to pop in here. All right. How can tenured government staff advocate for equitable pay when newer employees are being hired at higher salaries, especially when the structured pay systems are so rigid and non-negotiable? That is very difficult, especially when we're talking about structured pay systems. This is where it becomes very, very important to do your research and come to the table with the data points. And if you're not sure that you have the ability to demonstrate the results that you're getting and the value that you are bringing, it's time to start laying some of that groundwork before making the ask. So start collecting those data points, start looking at where you are creating value within your organization or your division or within your team. This is where it's very helpful to be able to show that you might have a new employee who is very bold about what they asked for and they got it, but you have a lot of experience and it would be very difficult for your organization and for your team if you were to leave. And so talking about the value that you bring, but also the cost of turnover, recruitment, retention. So coming to that discussion with more of those data points is very helpful. I hope that helps. Christy, did you notice any other questions in the chat? That was actually the only question that we had in the
Yes,
Q&A.
there are a couple. So
Okay, great.
one of the questions says, related to these tips, are there differences to be aware of between negotiating with a man versus a woman?
That is a really good question. So this is where I'll also tell you, I don't like making blanket generalizations because there are always things that we will hear that we think like, well, I don't relate to that, right? That is why it's so important for me in these presentations to share data and research from third-party organizations that show these trends. I think probably more important than the gender of the person you're negotiating with is being prepared with as much information as you can gather, whether that is somebody who is internal or with another organization, and really understanding the context, where they are coming from, their perspective, their limitations, their priorities, their personality, if you're able to get information on that or have context around that, but really showing up prepared to speak to those concerns, those priorities, and those limitations, I think is probably the most important. It's really difficult because, again, when women aren't aware of the issue, we often are perpetuating the problem. So I think just being as prepared as possible and doing as much research as possible is probably the best thing to do.
Thank you. There's one other one here in the chat that says, sometimes when I take a pause before responding in a group, the conversation gets away from me and then it feels awkward to interject. Any tips for this?
But I do that too. I know it feels very weird, doesn't it? I think if you're here's what's difficult. I think especially when we're very courteous or polite people, or we're very focused on other people and their experience or their feelings in a conversation, it feels difficult to stop. And this is when we hear people saying, or like we're trying to kind of continue the conversation so somebody doesn't interrupt us. But you can always kind of find a way to bring the conversation back. And this is where it's especially important in negotiations to be super focused and very clear on your objectives so that you can keep bringing the conversation back to those objectives. And I find it very helpful to make notes. So sometimes I might be thinking of something and the conversation sort of gets carried to, maybe kind of a different topic or in a different direction. And it just takes some practice. This is very common in media training where they teach you to kind of stay on topic because a journalist may not be very prepared, or they might be a little distracted and the questions are all over the place. But finding relevant ways to kind of always come back to your message and bring it back to your goals and objectives is very important. So make some notes, keep those objectives in mind, be very clear. And sometimes it might be a little awkward, but I would rather be uncomfortable and feel a little awkward temporarily in a negotiation and steer the conversation back to where it needs to go than to forego an important opportunity that I might not get again. I hope that helps. Any other questions? You're also welcome to email us anytime. I'm happy to make some time to respond to you if you think of questions afterward. That's no problem also.
Let's see. I'm not seeing any other questions. Going once, going twice. Well, this was absolutely incredible. There were so many things that I hadn't even thought about. I loved when you were talking about the presidential debate and the first one that was, and when I'm looking at it, I mean, wow, he really did look, JFK really did look that much more confident. So it is incredible what your body language can say. So, and I'm a
Very
fidgeter, so
interesting.
I'm going to be really thinking about that.
Yeah, me too. I get it. Totally
um,
understand.
yeah, but I appreciate your time so much. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and knowledge with our group. And you guys all know how you can reach Jennifer. I'm trying to give any last minute
Well, there is a
oh,
last
here,
question I
there
see
is.
here, Christy.
Good,
Yep.
go ahead, go ahead.
In government, it's often more about advocacy, timing, and persistence than negotiations alone. Do you have any pointers for those areas? That is an excellent observation. Absolutely. So, again, with advocacy, many times we are kind of more naturally comfortable with advocating for others or advocating on behalf of our teams or organizations at work or our family members. And so we need to really practice advocating for ourselves in the same way. And I think, staying on top of current events, setting Google reminders, that's really important. So we talk about timing and advocacy. So much of that is dependent upon a foundation of context and understanding what's happening. How are other things changing within an organization or with the other party potentially impacting what it is that we are asking for or the timing of what we are asking for? So setting those Google alerts, if you've never done that, it's free. And you can tell Google anytime something is published about this person, this organization, this particular situation or trend, I want you to send me an email. If it's something that you might get a lot of feedback on or a lot of results on, you can have it set as a digest where once a day you're getting kind of a recap of things that have happened or been published in the news. That is really important. We find in the private sector or when we are talking about stock prices change a result of a mention in the news, whether it's something that is accurate or not, right? So really understanding context and kind of the other pressures that the other party might be facing, it can help you to understand how their priorities and how their time is changing. And I think also just asking, sometimes just asking, right? Because if we look at it as we're trying to create this mutual benefit and we want to be of service, both of service to our organization and our party and to the other, it's important that we have important, that information, that critical information to make sure that we are creating the best mutual benefit. And so sometimes just asking, is this the right time? Should I be circling back? Do you need another week? Um, but just asking for that information. And so I think everything is really just always, it always comes back to research and preparedness and how can you have greater context for the other side's motivations, priorities, limitations, fears, the risks that they're willing to take, the pressures that they are facing, what are their headwinds? If nothing else, I think it helps us to walk in and have a more compassionate conversation that uh, speaks a little bit more to their situation and kind of what they are feeling and what they are experiencing, and kind of creating that connection and that compassion is always super, super helpful. That's a very, very good question. What is your advice on getting in front of someone who only wants to communicate via email? That's a good question. I do not like asking this way. I don't either. I want to talk face to face, but in this new norm, remote world, it is hard to get that face time. I feel more confident in face to face interactions. Negotiating via email is hard. It's really difficult and I hate it. And I hate how easy it is for people to ghost us when we send an email and we just don't ever hear anything back. And it's, did you get it? Is it in your spam? Are you ignoring me? What is happening? And so, there are some tactics that you can use. So if somebody is local, this is difficult, but I'm a big fan of the pop by, just stop by. Even if you drop off a gift and you don't get to see that person, or if you send them something in the mail, if you know they like chocolate chip cookies, right? You have crumble cookies delivered or something, but creating that goodwill. Hopefully you stop by and you get to run into that person and you can ask in person about scheduling something, or at least you are on their radar. Sometimes just in real life, if they get a piece of mail, we see that, everybody has gone digital and we do a lot of handwritten notes. We send gifts in the mail because then you are part of their real lives. That's important. I think saying, hey, everybody needs lunch. Let me stop by with lunch. Or what's your Starbucks order? I'm going to swing by. I'm going to be in that area. I'm going to swing by with Starbucks. What do you like? And sometimes it's just, again, it's as simple as being confident in your position. I think we're going to come to terms faster and find a more mutually agreeable, kind of beneficial result if we can get together and just talk through it. Sometimes it takes longer and it's less efficient to go through email. And I'd love to get together. Here's this time and this time, right? We don't leave it open like, when can you get together? Very easy to ghost. I can swing by Tuesday at 3 or Thursday at 1. Which one works better? And people oftentimes will feel compelled that they have to answer instead of leaving you hanging, or I can do a Zoom at those times, whatever that is. But don't leave it open ended, and always, always, always give a deadline. I would appreciate if you could respond to me by today at 5 p.m. or by close of business. But any request ever for information, for someone to do something, psychologically asking for somebody, with a deadline is super, super helpful in getting a response as well. I hope that helps.
That was great. Let's see. I don't think there is another one. How can I effectively advocate for a promotion and appropriate compensation when I have less tenure than others in similar roles, but have taken on comparable responsibilities and delivered strong results?
I wonder if I can see that question. Was that in the chat or the Q&A?
Yep,
Is
it's
that
in the
Q&A?
Q&A. Yep, you should be able
Okay,
to see it.
perfect.
Can you see that? Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'm a visual learner, so it helps me to see the question.
Same.
Okay, perfect. Effectively advocate for promotion and appropriate compensation when I have less tenure than others in similar roles, but have taken on comparable. Perfect. I love that you have the awareness that you might have less tenure or less experience, but that you are taking on comparable responsibilities and that you are delivering the same strong results. That's it. You got it. That's what you want to focus on, right? You want to walk in and focus on the value that you are providing being the same as people who are being compensated at a higher rate and asking for the same thing based on the value that you are bringing. I think, and this is something generally that remains unsaid, but I think that, when we have our information and our facts together, it's very hard for an employer to justify why one person would make more money for the same job and results than another, because it's just not right. So I think being able to politely show up and ask that question and show the data and say, hi, these are the same results, I'm getting the same results, and I would love to be considered for the same salary range. There might be other, feedback that you get, things you aren't aware of, situations you're not aware of. There might be budget constraints. So again, BATNA, we want to walk in and think of like, what is our, the best alternative to negotiating the agreement that we want. And so depending on the answer and how much you're asking for, maybe you take a little bit less if there are budget concerns, but you ask for more paid time off or a more flexible schedule or a day of remote work, whatever is important to you, but making sure that you are being compensated in some way for those results and those added responsibilities, because you're totally right. You should absolutely be getting the same compensation when you're doing the same work. That's very, very important. I think that was everything. Any other questions that you see, Christy?
Nothing else that I'm seeing.
Perfect. Well, you know where to
Yeah.
reach me if you think of anything. Happy to help anytime.
Yes. And thank you again so much. We really appreciate your time. And I hope you all enjoyed the webinar. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Let us know your thoughts, any topics, future topics you'd like, and make sure you become a member if you aren't already, and join us at the conference on November 6th and 7th at the Convention Center. So thank you again, Jennifer. Appreciate you so much. This was such a great topic.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Amazing information. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye,
Hope to connect
everybody.
soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
You too. Bye.